This is an example research paper. It is a drama research paper, but again, the format, the way the students organize information, all of the things that I'm asking you to do is done in this paper. It's just, again, about a different genre rather than short story. It's about drama. So you can see that this student has the correct MLA heading. This was not our section number, but other than that, it is correct. They have inserted the page number and then typed their last name in a space. They have an original title that is trying to get the reader's interest, the repression that breeds. You're thinking, what is that going to talk about? Right? What repression breeds in the works that he is going to be talking about? So they identify here the play that they're talking about in this paper. Of course, you're going to talk about you're going to identify the short story, and they let us know who the author of that work is. And in this introduction, what the student does is to try to get the reader's interest, gives an idea then of what they're going to be talking about. You don't have to give a plot summary for this paper, different than the short argument papers. Okay. So they get the reader's interest, and they come down and end the paragraph with their thesis statement. So through Streetcar, Williams displays the action and reactions of the characters who enforce on others the same repressive social standards that marginalize them in society. Stanley Kowalski, Blanche Dubois, and Alan Gray are all guilty of enforcing the same repressive social constructs that constrain them. All right. So that's what we're going to be finding out about then in this paper. Right? So it's like, why is this important? Because these characters that are repressed turn around and do the same thing to others. All right, so note that in this first body paragraph, they clearly identify the source that they're using. So according to, and here we have an article title, Critical Context, a room that I thought was empty, the representation of repression in a streetcar named Desire, critic Neil Himes presents the idea that Stanley Kowalski, as he is portrayed, assertive to the point of volatility, looks anything but constrained by repression, yet his personality and actions are built on it and are responses to it. Right. So note that the first time this student uses this source, they tell us the title of the source and they tell us the name of the critic. Okay. They introduce their quote using this information. So here, right, then we have our quote. Remember here we have our closed quotation marks at the end, and then here is the page number from this source. Right, and notice that the punctuation, end punctuation, comes after the closed parentheses. So this helps the reader have faith that the author of this paper is credible, because they're clearly telling where they got this information. And then the student explains, right, the significance, what he means by putting this quote in. So, Stanley constantly has to reassert himself in class confrontations with Blanche and Stella to reaffirm his superiority over women. So he goes on, and then here, right, we have the same author, and so you don't have to tell all this information again, but instead just can say Himes states and give another quote from the article that supports the thesis, supports what he's talking about. And again, I'm citing the page number at the end. Notice that there is no page, it's just the number itself. So going on to elaborate on that, using a quote from the play itself. And when you do that, in the end, the end of the quote, then last name of the author, and then the page numbers of where this was found. Remember, if you're using an HTML text, you don't have real page numbers, then you're going to use paragraph numbers. PAR period, and then put the paragraph numbers. And then the student does the same thing in the second body paragraph by identifying the article so that, again, it's clear that it's getting his information from a credible source. So the title of it, and then the author. And you can see here, right this time, it didn't have a real page number, so the student had to put in the PAR and then 2. And also, I want you to note here that instead of using a direct quote, the student has summarized or paraphrased the information from the source. And so he still gets that information from this source, so he still has to give credit for it, both by telling the critic's name and then by citing it at the end, the paragraph number. Also, going back, but again, he's talking about in the thesis statement, the first character he mentions is Stanley Kowalski. And so the first person, or the first character he talks about, is Stanley Kowalski. Right? He doesn't start with Alan Gray or Blanche Dubois, because that's not the first name that's mentioned in the thesis statement. So after talking about Stanley, then he moves on to talking about Blanche. Same thing again, right? He didn't start out the paragraph. You certainly don't have to start off your paragraph with the title of the source and the author. But again, when you get ready to introduce a source for the first time, it's, again, very strong to give the title of the article and then the name of the critic who says it. Again, right, the student didn't find a true page number from a PDF or from a book, but instead they had to, they were using an HTML document, no doubt, and had to count the paragraphs. Another source is used in this next body paragraph. Again, still talking about Blanche. And then moving on to incorporating Alan Gray into the argument. Again, there's another quote from the play itself. And again, another source is used here. So again, it's clear that that's a new source, and it's clear that it's going to be a credible source because it is, when people will tell where it is, and it's easy then to see it on the works cited page, match it up, and then see that it's from a library database. That is a good plan, right? That's a good strategy to use in your paper. I'm not going to read the whole paper to you. You can read it to look at those examples, and then notice that that it is 4 full pages, and it goes on a little bit into page 5. So again, you're making sure that you're meeting that minimum page length, that there is no doubt about it, and then also you note that the works cited does not start right after the text ends here. Some people do that, but that is incorrect. You're going to, it doesn't matter if it just takes up, if your last page, you've just got a sentence or 2 on it. You still don't want to start your works cited page until the next one. Right? You start a new page, but you don't start a new document because you want your page numbers to be continuous. So this is going to be the 6th page of his research paper. You see the title here, Center Works Cited. That's what you should have on your paper, nothing else. It's not bold. It's not made larger than the other text. Notice that everything here is double spaced. It's still Times New Roman, 12-point font, but the difference is there is a hanging indentation. If you do not know how to do a hanging indentation, what you would do is you highlight the whole thing. You go up here to where it says paragraph, and there's a drop-down menu. And where it says special here, you would choose hanging. Right? Usually that's not the default. The default is none, but it would be the first line if it were the paragraphs in your paper. But for the works cited, it has to be hanging indentation. And then once you had chosen hanging, then you could go down here to OK. And of course it's not going to change it right now because it's already done correctly. That's very important, right, to have the hanging indentation. The second thing I want to point out is that the sources on the works cited page are listed in alphabetical order by the last name of the author. So Hymes, Hovis, Colon, Powler, Shackelford, and finally Williams, the play that was used, right? So the last name of the author of the play. So again, you can see that they used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 critical sources, one more than they had to use, as in addition to the play itself. So that was what you would do. So in addition to the story or stories, you would have at least 4 critics. Again, so a couple of things that students sometimes don't get correct here. The title of an article is going to be in quotation marks. Usually it is a journal where these come from, but it could be a book, and that's going to be italicized. The title of a book, the title of a journal is going to be italicized. If it were a newspaper, right? If it were a magazine, those things will all be italicized. And then there's the other information that the MLA requires. Then this is the name of the library database. The title of the library database is always going to be italicized. Then you have to give the URL, or you could use the DOI. And finally, you're going to end with the date of access, unless the citation tools had put it in automatically for you somewhere inside the citation. Okay? So if it's not there, you have to add it for whatever day that you find this article. And then you put accessed, you put the day, then you put the month, and you would not abbreviate it if it's July. So you don't have to abbreviate months that are long enough. August, if you didn't find it until August, then you'd abbreviate it AUG, and then the year, right, that you found it. So 2020, right, for all of your sources. If you're wondering why this looks so long, it's because it was reprinted several times. So it gives all the publication information, not just the very last place it was published, but in all the sources where it was published. You may not have any that look like that, but if you do, don't be alarmed. That's okay. And I think that's everything that I wanted to point out here.